The W210 E class. Is it a Mercedes Classic or not? I see a lot of people popping on my channel and say, oh, the W210 is such a good car. You know, I had this like Mercedes from the late, 2000s, like a 2009 E350 or a 2012 E350 or, some kind of S-Class. And then I went backwards in time and I bought an E320 wagon or an E320 sedan, W210 chassis or an E300 turbo diesel. And I was wondering if these are like the same caliber of car that that the W124 and 123 and 126 are. So, time for a rude awakening. The W210 is a safe car. It's a reliable car. It's a pretty durable car, but it's not a classic. It's sort of like the Mercedes version of like a 2000 Crown Victoria. I'm going to look at some of the pros of the W210 though, to be fair. And I'm going to talk about some of the minuses of the W210 also, to be fair. And then we're going to weigh out the pros and the cons. So let's start with the pros. First of all, the 6-cylinder engines, whether they're diesel or gasoline used in the W210, were pretty good. Now, early cars used the M104 inline 6 in 96, 97, and part of 98. And those engines continued to have head gasket issues. They continued to have some issues with wiring harnesses, although not nearly as bad as the 124. But those engines are relatively repairable. Now, the later engine that supplanted it was the M112 M112 V6, and of course at the same time early E420s used the M119 engine, which is later replaced by the M113 V8. So all these engines are pretty good engines, but the M113 and M112 engines are pretty boring, reliable V engines. And I could give a lot of credit to Mercedes for designing internal engine architecture that was durable, didn't need head gaskets, didn't need, expensive and complicated balance shaft replacements. The M112 engine was succeeded by the, I think it was the M270 V6 that had the balance shafts. And those engines were not great for so many years. You had to do a balance shaft upgrade and replacement. You could sink $5,000 into that engine. Pretty much the same cost as doing a double row timing chain conversion on the 380. But anyway, going back to the 112 engine, it was a good engine. And now we're going to look at some other factors. So it's pretty cheap to buy an E320. You could buy an E320 wagon, a good one, for under $5,000. You can buy a reliable beater for $1,500 to $2,000, and you can generally keep these cars on the road on a pretty limited budget as long as you're not obsessed with every single thing working. I think that some of the other pros of the W210 chassis include its crash worthiness. It was definitely a car that I would put a teenager in. They were definitely designed with good comprehensive diagnostics, and the diesel models were extremely fuel efficient. And that's about it. Now, the things about the W210 that I don't like. First of all, these are still kind of complicated cars to repair if you want everything to work right. Electronic items do fail. You can have a bad base module, you can have a bad HFM SFI module, you can have failure of throttle controls or coil packs, and sometimes diagnosing this stuff isn't very easy, so you need to buy some diagnostic parts too. The steering racks on the W210 can go and they can leak like crazy, and they're kind of a pain in the butt to change. Even removing a harmonic balancer bolt. You look at the harmonic balancer on the 112 engine, and these are an item that fails. Oh, my buddy's back. Let me finish this real quick. Okay. These are an item that fails, but the big problem with these engines isn't so much these exterior components that are, you know, so annoying to get to. It's the fact that the entire engine or transmission, if it does go down, it can be kind of expensive to rebuild. I mean, transmissions in these cars, because of the flexible service system and the sealed for life guarantee that Mercedes gave owners of these cars, basically means that transmission life was like around 150 to 200,000 miles at best. I also think there are a lot of plastic parts, and the materials quality in the cars, while it's not awful, isn't the best. I think that as they age too, they've shown signs of corrosion, which is something that other cars do. And it seems to me that a lot of W210s out there, you know, once they start to develop problems with interior climate control, electronics, or they start to develop issues with their wiring harnesses, especially when they're in you know, for headlights and other necessary parts that perform basic functions of the car, you're going to end up with more repairs than you want to do on a fairly electronic plastic 90s car. So the W210 is a good car, but I wouldn't say it's as serviceable or diagnosable or easily repairable as a 123 or even a 124. If you like your 210, that's great. I'm glad. You know, I'm not necessarily here on this channel to support the model, but you should do whatever you can to service your car. It's still a better car than the stuff that came after it. And I think that that's the truth. Anyway, if you enjoyed this video, please like, share, and subscribe. Please tap the bell for notifications, and leave your comments below to let us know if you think the W210 is a better car than I think it is. And in the meantime, enjoy wrenching on your classic Mercedes, and we give a big hearty thank you to all of our Patreon supporters. Take care.